The stars were quiet. Too quiet. On the surface of what once had been a thriving city, smoke curled in thin gray spirals into the dark sky. Buildings were twisted metal and crumbled stone. Streets were cracked and empty. Humanity, once proud and full of life, now lay in ruins. Elias Kane opened his eyes slowly. His head ached and his limbs felt heavy, as if the weight of centuries pressed down on him. He sat up, blinking at the cold, dim light that filled the abandoned room. The walls were metallic, lined with panels covered in dust. His memories were hazy, but the sense of loss hit him like a wave. The world he remembered was gone. Outside the small shelter, the silence was broken only by distant echoes. Ships flew far above the planet, massive and alien. Their sleek forms reflected the faint light of the sun, but their movements were clinical and cruel. Elias had seen ships like these before in reports, in simulations, in dreams of a war he had tried to avoid. But now they were real. The Zirath had claimed victory. Every colony, every city, every settlement, humanity was supposed to be gone. Their leaders had broadcast messages across space, declaring that humanity had been extinguished. No one had survived. Not even the stories of humans resisting or escaping mattered anymore. According to the Zirath, the final victory was theirs. Elias shook his head. "They are wrong," he whispered to himself. His voice sounded weak in the emptiness, but there was a spark in his eyes, a tiny flicker that refused to die. Humans had always been underestimated. Too small, too weak, too fragile. But there was one thing the Zirath did not understand. Humans never gave up. He rose slowly, testing his limbs. The cryogenic sleep had left him stiff but alive. As he moved through the shelter, he activated the few systems that still worked. A holographic map flickered to life. It showed the solar system, the ruined cities of Earth, and beyond that, the distant colonies humanity had built over centuries. Most were destroyed. Most were silent. Most were empty. But not all. Elias knew that somewhere, scattered across planets and moons, there were survivors. Humans who had hidden, who had fled, who had refused to die quietly, and he would find them. If humanity had fallen, it would not be because of defeat. It would be because the aliens had not yet faced the full strength of the human spirit. He stepped outside, the cold wind biting at his face. The city was a graveyard, but even in its emptiness, Elias felt life. Life that waited to rise again. And then he saw it, a shadow moving in the distance. A small figure, careful and fast, moving across the debris. It was human. "Who's there?" Elias called, his voice steadier than he expected. The figure froze, then raised hands in a gesture of peace. I'm Mara," she said. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes were sharp, alert. "I thought I was alone," Elias nodded. "You're not. You're not alone. I'm Elias Kane, and we are not done yet." Mara's eyes widened. You survived?" Everyone said. "Everyone said we were gone." Elias smiled faintly. "They said wrong." Over the next few hours, Mara told him what she knew. The Zirath were patrolling the system, enforcing their rule with force and fear. Most humans had surrendered, hiding in shadows or fleeing to places the aliens did not yet control. But there were small pockets of resistance, tiny sparks waiting for someone to ignite the fire. Elias listened carefully. He could feel hope building, not just in him, but in Mara as well. If even a few humans had survived, then there was a chance. A chance to fight back. A chance to remind the galaxy why humans had once risen among the stars. They began to plan. Not with guns, not with large armies, yet Elias knew humans had lost many of their weapons and ships. But they still had their greatest advantage: ingenuity. Humans could take what little they had and make it into something powerful. They could adapt. They could outthink the aliens. Elias and Mara moved carefully through the ruined city, avoiding the patrolling Zirath drones. The alien machines were precise, scanning for movement, for heat, for life. But humans were clever. They hid in shadows, moved silently, and used the debris of their own world as camouflage. "This way," Elias whispered, leading Mara into a narrow tunnel beneath the city. "It's safer here. We can talk without being seen." Inside the tunnel, the air was damp and cold. Walls were lined with old pipes and cables, remnants of a once great civilization. Elias traced his fingers along the metal, thinking of the past, of the cities full of laughter, of children playing in the streets, of the busy markets and bustling ports. All gone, but not forgotten. We need others, Elias said finally. We can't fight alone. But if we find the survivors, if we bring them together, then maybe, just maybe, we can make them regret calling victory. Mara nodded, determination in her eyes. I know a place, she said. A hidden base on the moon. A few of us have been there. They're waiting for someone to lead them. Elias felt a thrill of hope. A hidden base, a place to gather, to plan, to start again. Then we go, he said. We start small. One step at a time. Humans may be down, but we are never finished. We survive, we adapt. We fight! As they made their way to the transport station, the sky above rumbled with the hum of alien ships. The Zerath still believed they had won. They still believed humanity was nothing. But Elias, Kane, and Mara were alive, and even a single human, awake and determined, was enough to change everything. The journey to the hidden base would be dangerous. They would have to navigate patrols, traps, and hostile worlds. But Elias was not afraid. Fear had no place in a human who had seen the worst and refused to surrender. Every step they took was a message to the galaxy. Humans may fall, but they rise again. At the edge of the city, Elias paused and looked back at the ruins. Smoke rose from broken towers. Shadows moved between the remains of once great streets. And somewhere in the distance he could see the alien fleet, shining and menacing, believing their victory was complete. Elias clenched his fists. Let them believe, he said quietly. Let them think it's over. They will see soon enough. Humans are not so easily defeated. With that, he turned and led Mara toward the stars, toward the hidden base, toward the first spark of a resistance that would remind the galaxy what it truly meant to face humanity. The Zerath thought they had won, but they had not counted on the human spirit. They had not counted on ingenuity, courage, and the refusal to surrender. And as Elias looked up at the dark sky, filled with distant, indifferent stars, he knew that the battle was only just beginning. Even in the darkest hour, a single human eye could see the path forward. And that sight alone was enough to challenge the so-called final victory. Elias and Mara moved quickly through the rocky terrain of the moon. The surface was gray and cold, scattered with craters and jagged cliffs. Above them, the alien fleet patrolled silently, a constant reminder of the Zerath's presence. Every shadow could hide danger, every ridge could conceal an enemy patrol. But Elias did not waver. This way, Mara whispered, leading him toward a series of tunnels carved long ago by human miners. If we reach the base without being seen, we can meet the others and plan. The tunnels were dark and narrow, but for Mara and Elias, they were a lifeline. Humans had always survived by hiding, by thinking creatively, by using their environment to their advantage. The Zerath were powerful but rigid. They relied on brute force and strict rules. Humans, on the other hand, could adapt, improvise, and outsmart their opponents. Finally, after hours of careful travel, they reached a concealed entrance. It was a simple metal hatch hidden behind rocks, but beyond it lay a small human base. Lights flickered inside, and the hum of machinery was steady and reassuring. Humans were alive. Humans were waiting. As the hatch opened, a dozen faces turned toward them. They were rough, hardened by survival, but alive and alert. One of them, a tall woman with silver streaks in her hair, stepped forward. "Elias Kane," she said with recognition and respect. "We thought you were gone. Welcome." "Thank you," Elias replied, nodding. "We need to talk. The Zerath believe they have won, but they have underestimated us. If we work together, we can show them that humans are not so easily defeated." Inside the base, humans had created a small, functioning community. Rooms carved into rock held living quarters, workshops, and command centers. Supplies were limited, but ingenuity compensated for scarcity. Tools were repaired, weapons improvised, and even communication equipment salvaged from wreckage had been restored to working order. Elias examined their setup carefully. "We have resources," he said, "but not enough to fight directly. We need to be smart. We need to strike where they least expect us." Mara nodded. "We've managed small raids before," she said. "Disrupting supply lines, rescuing prisoners. The Zerath call it chaos, but it keeps them off balance. We can do more." Elias smiled faintly. Humans had always been underestimated. Against the Zerath, that was their greatest advantage. The aliens were strong and organized, but they were predictable. Humans could bend the rules, find the cracks, and strike where it hurt the most. The first plan was simple but dangerous. A small Zerath convoy carried supplies from one base to another. Elias proposed intercepting it. Not to destroy it completely, there were too few humans, but to sabotage it, slow it down, and show the aliens that resistance was not finished. "We need a small team," Elias said. "Mara, you and I will lead. Others will follow as needed. We strike at dawn." The night passed slowly, each moment stretching with tension. Outside, the alien ships patrolled above the moon, scanning for life. The humans inside the base prepared quietly. Weapons were checked, tools gathered, and plans reviewed. Every step was measured, every move calculated. When dawn came, Elias and his team moved out. They followed the rocky terrain, using the shadows and craters for cover. Ahead, the convoy moved steadily, massive vehicles carrying supplies for the Zerath fleet. The aliens inside the convoy were confident, unaware that humans were close. Elias signaled to Mara. They split into two groups, flanking the convoy from both sides. Using improvised devices, they disabled communication lines, creating confusion among the alien operators. Small explosions rocked the vehicles, but no humans were in immediate danger. The Zerath reacted immediately. Drones flew up, scanning for intruders, but humans had prepared for this. Using hidden tunnels and natural cover, they moved quickly, striking with precision. A single human could disable a vehicle, disrupt a patrol, or set a trap. Their unpredictability was their strength. By the time the Zerath realized the scale of the sabotage, the humans had already vanished into the shadows. The convoy was slowed, supplies delayed, and alien morale shaken. It was a small victory, but a significant one. Back at the base, the humans celebrated quietly. There were no loud cheers. Loudness would attract attention, but smiles and nods passed among them. Elias addressed the group. "This is only the beginning. The Zerath think we are finished. They think humans are weak. They are wrong. Every step we take, every plan we execute reminds them that humanity cannot be crushed so easily." Mara added, "And it gives hope to others. Humans, aliens oppressed by the Zerath, anyone who has been waiting for a sign, we are that sign. They will see that resistance is possible." Elias nodded. Humans thrived on hope even in the darkest times. And now that hope was spreading. Small victories could grow into something greater. A movement, a rebellion, a reminder to the galaxy that humanity refused to vanish quietly. Days passed, and the humans continued their work. Scouts moved to find other survivors. Engineers repaired ships, and strategists planned new raids. Each mission was small, each strike precise, but collectively they were beginning to disrupt the Zerath's control. One evening, Elias studied a map of the solar system. "We can't fight them directly," he said, tracing a finger along the paths of alien patrols. "But we can force them to respond. Every action we take, every convoy we disrupt, every base we infiltrate, it stretches them thin. It forces them to make mistakes." Mara leaned over his shoulder. "And mistakes are what humans exploit best," Elias smiled. "Exactly. They may have technology, power, fleets, but we have something they cannot predict. Imagination, adaptability, courage." The Zerath leadership, confident and arrogant, continued to plan their next moves. They spoke of humans as if they were a footnote, a species long defeated. Their overconfidence blinded them. They did not see the small lights of resistance flickering in hidden corners of the system. Elias knew that one human could not defeat the Zerath alone. But a group of humans, united by purpose and guided by ingenuity, could achieve the impossible. And that was their plan. Not to match the Zerath in strength, but to outthink them, to move where the aliens were blind, to strike when least expected. A week later, news came from one of the scouts. Another small human settlement had survived on a distant moon. They had been hiding for months, afraid to act, afraid to hope. But now, inspired by the first raids, they were ready. Elias called a meeting. "We will go to them. We will show them that humanity is not finished. Every person we save, every base we connect, every action we take, it builds a network. One that the Zerath cannot control." Mara looked at him with admiration. "You really believe humans can rise again?" Elias's eyes shone with determination. "I do more than believe, I know. We may be few, but we are resilient. We may be scattered, but we are resourceful. We may be hunted, but we are clever. The Zerath think they have won, but they have not seen what humans can do when they refuse to surrender." Preparations began immediately. Teams packed supplies, repaired transport vehicles, and mapped routes that avoided alien patrols. Each move was careful, each step calculated. The humans knew they were still vulnerable, but vulnerability did not mean weakness. It meant opportunity. And then one quiet night as the alien ships patrolled above, Elias stood outside the base looking at the stars. The Zereth had declared final victory. They believed humanity was gone. But the galaxy did not know the truth. Humans were waking. Humans were moving. And a spark, once small, could ignite a fire that no alien empire could extinguish. Elias whispered to himself, "They think it's over. They think humans are defeated, but we are just beginning." And with that, the first true threads of rebellion began to weave across the stars. Small acts of courage, intelligence, and hope were spreading, reaching humans who had almost given up. Humanity, though beaten down, was beginning to rise again. The Zerath had claimed the final victory, but one human had opened his eyes, and the galaxy would soon discover that victory had been nothing but an illusion. The hidden base on the moon hummed with quiet activity. Humans moved through narrow corridors, carrying tools, scanning maps, and preparing for missions that would challenge the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. Every human in the base had a role, and every role mattered. Elias Kane walked through the command center, examining reports from scouts and spies. His mind worked quickly, piecing together information about the Zerath's movements, their patrol schedules, and weaknesses in their systems. Unlike the aliens, humans could think flexibly, improvise, and adapt. Where the Zerath relied on rigid strategies and predictable patterns, humans used creativity as a weapon. Mara approached, holding a datapad. "We've located a supply hub on one of the outer moons," she said. "It's lightly guarded, mostly automated. If we act carefully, we could sabotage it without risking too many lives." Elias studied the map. "Perfect," he said. "Every disruption we cause forces the Zerath to spread their forces thinner. They can't adapt as quickly as we can. Each small victory builds into something larger. And each victory reminds humans that they are not powerless." They began planning. The team would use stealth drones to disable security sensors, improvised EMP devices to disrupt alien machinery, and traps hidden along the pathways to delay any reinforcements. The Zerath thought humans were weak, predictable, and fragile, but Elias knew that was a mistake. Humans were clever, adaptable, and willing to risk everything to survive. As the team prepared, scouts returned with more information. The Zerath had begun increasing patrols in response to previous raids, yet they still underestimated the humans. They believed that one or two acts of sabotage could not amount to a real threat. They did not realize that humans could turn small victories into major strategic advantages. Elias gathered his team in a small room deep inside the moon base. "Listen carefully," he said. "This mission is not just about destroying equipment. It's about sending a message. Every act we take should force them to question their assumptions. Humans are not predictable. Humans are not weak. Humans are unstoppable when we refuse to surrender." The humans nodded. They had seen their world nearly destroyed, but they had also seen the spark of hope. They understood that ingenuity and courage were more powerful than brute force. Each of them carried the knowledge that the Zerath had underestimated them, and that was their advantage. The mission began at dawn. Elias led the team through rocky tunnels toward the outer moon, moving silently under the shadows of jagged cliffs. Drones flew above, scanning for heat signatures, but humans were careful. They moved with patience, using every obstacle for cover. When they reached the supply hub, it seemed almost peaceful. Machines working automatically, guards resting in their stations. But Elias knew better. Every moment counted. One mistake could alert the Zerath and the mission would fail. "Place the EMP here," he instructed, pointing to a conduit connecting the hub's power system. "Disable the sensors here. Mara, you take the side entrance and plant the traps. Timing is critical. Move fast, move quiet." The team spread out, working with precision. Humans may not have had the advanced technology of the Zerath, but they had creativity, determination, and an instinct for strategy. Using materials salvaged from old human ships, they improvised devices that could disrupt alien machinery. Drones patrolled the perimeter, but humans used shadows and terrain to remain invisible. Minutes felt like hours as they worked. Finally, the EMP was in place, the sensors disabled, and the trap set. Elias checked his watch. "Now," he whispered. With a signal, the devices activated. Machines in the supply hub stuttered and shut down. Guards scrambled, confused, But the humans had already vanished into the terrain, leaving only chaos behind. Back at the moon base, the team celebrated quietly. The mission had been a success and the Zerath's supply lines were disrupted. Every delay forced the aliens to rethink their plans, spread their forces thinner and make mistakes. And every mistake humans could exploit. Elias reviewed the reports from the mission. "Notice the pattern," he said to Mara. "The Zerath react in predictable ways. They reinforce areas where we strike. They overestimate our numbers but underestimate our intelligence. That is where we have the advantage. Humans are flexible. Humans improvise. Humans think differently than any alien species they have faced." Mara nodded. "They don't understand us. They can't. And that's why we win even when we are outnumbered." The following weeks were a whirlwind of action. Humans carried out multiple raids, each small but precise. Supply hubs were sabotaged, patrols delayed, and communication arrays disrupted. The Zerath responded, deploying more troops, more drones, and more ships. But every deployment created opportunities elsewhere. Humans were everywhere the Zerath were not prepared for. In one daring mission, Elias led a team to rescue prisoners from a Zerath detention facility. The aliens had believed humans were extinct, so the facility had not been heavily guarded. Using tunnels, improvised tools, and careful timing, the humans infiltrated the prison, freed the captives, and vanished before the alarm could reach the main fleet. The rescued humans joined the hidden base, swelling the ranks of the resistance. With each addition, Elias adjusted his strategy. The human advantage was not strength, it was unity, intelligence, and adaptability. The Zerath had strength in numbers, but humans had something they could not replicate: ingenuity and courage. News of the raids began to spread. Across the solar system, humans hiding in shadows learned that resistance was possible. Humans who had been afraid to act began to come forward. Each story, each spark of rebellion, added to the growing network of humans determined to reclaim their freedom. Elias studied the reports from the scouts one evening. "We are beginning to see results," he said. "The Zerath are stretched thin. They cannot predict where we strike next. That unpredictability is our greatest weapon. It is proof that the human spirit is stronger than any alien fleet." Mara leaned against the wall, thoughtful, and every time we succeed, more humans join us. They see hope. They see that survival is not just about hiding, it's about fighting smart. That is something no Zerath can understand. Elias nodded. "Exactly. We are showing the galaxy that humans cannot be crushed. Not by technology, not by numbers, not by fear. Our strength comes from our mind, our courage, and our will to survive. And once the Zerath realize that, it will be too late for them to stop us." The Zerath leadership, confident and arrogant, began noticing the disruptions. Supply lines delayed, patrols ambushed, and communication networks faltering. They could not understand how a few humans could create such chaos. Reports from the field indicated confusion among the Zerath forces. They had planned for humans to be extinct. They had declared victory. But humans had not disappeared, they had adapted. They had survived. Elias gathered the leadership of the base. "They believe they are in control," he said, pointing to the maps of alien movements. "They think humans are weak and predictable. That is our advantage. Every raid, every act of sabotage, every rescue shows them they are wrong. Humans are unpredictable. Humans are resilient. And humans never surrender." The team listened, inspired. They had seen the truth in their missions, that even the smallest human could make a difference. Even when outnumbered and outgunned, humans could find a way to succeed. That was the essence of their species, and it was a weapon no alien could counter. In the following days, humans continued their operations across multiple moons. Supply hubs were delayed, patrols were misled, and communication networks scrambled. Every success was small in scale but massive in impact. The Zerath forces grew frustrated, their confidence shaken. They had claimed final victory, yet humans were still alive, still active, still defying their control. One evening, Elias and Mara watched the alien patrols move above the moon from a hidden ridge. The ships were sleek, powerful, and numerous, but humans were everywhere the Zerath were not prepared for. "They don't understand us," Mara said quietly. "No," Elias agreed. "And that is why we win. They see strength in technology and numbers, but humans have something more important: intelligence, courage, and the ability to adapt. That is our true weapon. As the stars shimmered above the moon, Elias felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever. The Zerath had declared final victory, but humans had begun a new war, not with brute force but with ingenuity, strategy, and unbreakable spirit. Each small victory added to a larger plan, one that would one day force the Zerath to see what they had truly underestimated. The human advantage was clear. They could survive, they could adapt, and they could outthink any enemy, and with every step they were proving that humanity's spirit was impossible to destroy. The hidden human base on the moon was alive with movement. Humans moved swiftly through corridors, checking equipment, studying maps, and preparing for a mission that would take them closer to the heart of the Zerath Empire. The atmosphere was tense but determined. Every face reflected the same truth. They had survived, and now it was time to show the galaxy that humans could fight back. Elias Kane stood at the command table, examining the latest intelligence. The Zerath had begun reinforcing their outer colonies, fearing continued disruptions. Supply lines were rerouted, patrols doubled, and automated defenses strengthened. Yet for all their power, they remained blind to the human advantage. Every strike humans made exploited the aliens' rigidity, forcing them into mistakes they could not predict. "We've delayed their fleet movements by almost a week," Elias said to Mara, who stood beside him. "Their communication network is inconsistent. Their supply lines are vulnerable. And most importantly, they still underestimate us. That is our window." Mara nodded. "We can't hit them head-on. But if we strike at the command hub itself, it would force them to respond, and in their response we can create even more opportunities." Elias smiled. "Exactly. Timing, precision, and intelligence. The Zerath have strength. Humans have strategy." The plan was daring. They would infiltrate a major Zerath command hub located on a barren asteroid. The hub controlled fleet movements, patrol routes, and supply distribution across several sectors. Disabling it, even temporarily, would create confusion, delay the Zerath, and allow humans across the system to coordinate actions without immediate retaliation. Preparation took days. Humans repaired old ships, improvised weapons, and tested systems repeatedly. Every mission had risks, and this one carried the highest stakes yet. But humans had something the Zerath could never fully understand: courage mixed with ingenuity. Finally, the team launched under the cover of darkness. Human ships moved silently, cloaked by shadows and asteroid debris. Sensors flickered in and out, a product of careful interference from scouts who had studied the Zerath technology. Every step was calculated, every move precise. Failure was not an option. Elias led the strike team as they approached the hub. The structure loomed large, metallic, and imposing, surrounded by defensive drones and automated turrets. On the surface, alien guards patrolled in regular patterns, confident that no human could reach their fortress. "They think they are safe," Elias whispered. "And that is their mistake." The team split into groups, each taking a calculated path to the hub's vulnerable points. Mara and Elias moved toward the central communication array. Using EMP devices, they disabled outer sensors, causing confusion among the guards. Explosions from improvised charges created diversions, drawing attention away from the main team's approach. Inside the hub, humans moved with precision. Security doors were bypassed using tools scavenged from old human ships. Patrols were neutralized quietly, without unnecessary force. Every human knew that the goal was disruption, not destruction. Every act had to be calculated to maximize confusion while minimizing risk. At the command center, Elias interfaced with the hub's systems. Using a combination of human ingenuity and stolen alien codes, he sent false orders through the Zerath network. Patrols were rerouted to wrong sectors. Supply shipments were delayed. Fleet movements were altered without alien commanders realizing until it was too late. The impact was immediate. Drones flew in wrong directions. Fleets paused uncertainly and automated defenses shut down intermittently. Confusion rippled through the Zerath Empire. One by one, humans in other sectors seized the opportunity, executing coordinated raids, freeing prisoners, and striking supply lines. The network of resistance that Elias had begun to build now showed its power. Meanwhile, the Zerath commander overseeing the hub realized something was wrong. "How is this possible?" he demanded, his voice sharp and angry. "Humans are extinct. Every report says they are gone." Reports kept coming. Convoys delayed, patrols misdirected, prisoners freed, and communication channels disrupted. The Zerath were losing control, not because of numbers, but because they had underestimated human intelligence. Their rigid thinking, their reliance on protocol became their weakness. Elias and Mara completed the final steps of their mission, ensuring the hub remained disrupted long enough for maximum effect. They retreated carefully, leaving no trace except chaos and confusion. Outside, human ships waited, ready to carry them back to the hidden base. Every movement was precise, every risk calculated. Back at the moon base, humans celebrated quietly. Each member knew the significance of the operation. For the first time, a major Zerath command hub had been infiltrated and disrupted. It was not a complete victory, but it was a turning point. The aliens had begun to doubt themselves. They had begun to realize that humans were not easily defeated. Elias addressed the team. "This is the beginning of a new phase," he said. The Zerath believed humans were weak. They believed our species was finished. But every action we take now shows them the truth. Humans are not predictable. Humans adapt. Humans survive. And humans fight when they refuse to surrender. Mara added, "They may have the fleet, the weapons, the numbers, but we have something stronger. Intelligence, courage, and creativity. That is the human advantage." As news of the operation spread across the solar system, more humans began to join the resistance. Small settlements that had been hiding in fear now came forward, inspired by the reports of daring missions. Supplies, knowledge, and new recruits poured into the network, expanding the reach of human resistance. The Zerath, confident and arrogant, were forced to respond. They reinforced patrols, deployed more ships, and sent new commanders to regain control. But every move they made was anticipated, disrupted, or countered by humans. Their rigid structures, once a strength, became their weakness. Humans moved unpredictably, striking where the aliens were blind. Elias studied reports late one night. "They are starting to see the pattern," he said quietly. "They cannot adapt as quickly as we can. Every strike, every sabotage, every rescue forces them to stretch thinner. Their control is slipping." Mara looked at him, eyes filled with admiration. "And every victory reminds humans that they are not alone. That resistance is possible. That survival is not just about hiding, it is about fighting smart." Elias nodded. "Exactly. The Zerath have strength, but humans have resilience. They have courage. They have the ability to adapt. And they have the will to survive no matter how dire the circumstances. That is our true power." For the first time in centuries, humans across the system felt hope. Small, hidden victories had grown into a movement. The Zerath had declared final victory, yet humans were not finished. Humans were rising, coordinated by intelligence and determination, and their presence was now impossible to ignore. Elias watched the stars from the ridge outside the base. The alien fleet patrolled above, their lights sweeping across the moon's surface. They believed they were in control. They believed their victory was absolute. But humans were awake, humans were moving, and humans were changing the balance of power. "They think it's over," Elias whispered. "They think we are defeated. But they have only just realized that victory was never theirs to claim." As night fell, humans prepared for the next stage. Each small strike, each act of courage, each successful mission expanded the resistance. The Zerath were beginning to see what they had overlooked. Humanity's ingenuity, resilience, and courage were impossible to destroy. And the galaxy was about to witness the full power of a species that refused to be defeated. The turning point had arrived. The Zerath would never forget it. Humans were no longer hiding. Humans were no longer afraid. And humans were finally beginning to show the galaxy that the final victory was not theirs to claim. The stars glittered above the hidden human base, calm and indifferent, unaware that a storm was brewing beneath their quiet light. Humans, long thought extinct, were no longer hiding. The network of survivors had grown, connecting scattered settlements across moons, planets, and stations. What began as whispers of hope had transformed into a rising tide of resistance, guided by intelligence, courage, and determination. Elias Kane stood at the command table, examining the latest reports from scouts and strike teams. Zerath patrols were stretched thin across the solar system. Supply lines were disrupted, communication arrays were scrambled, and fleets had begun to hesitate before moving. The Zerath were still powerful, but they were uncertain. They had misjudged humans, and now their arrogance became their weakness. "This is it," Elias said, his voice steady. "They believe their victory is complete, but they have not faced the full strength of humanity. Today we remind the galaxy that humans are never defeated. Mara, standing beside him, nodded. The command hub is our target, she said. If we disable it even temporarily, it will force the Zerath fleet to respond. And in their response, we can exploit weaknesses we have discovered over weeks of careful observation. The plan was bold and dangerous. The command hub controlled fleet movements and supply distribution across several sectors. Its defenses were heavy, but the humans had learned to use the Zerath's rigidity against them. They would infiltrate the hub using stealth, deception, and improvisation, human ingenuity at its finest. The strike team prepared quietly. Weapons were checked, devices tested, and routes memorized. Each member understood the risk. Every human present had lost something to the Zerath, homes, family, or freedom. But they also carried hope, courage, and a determination that no alien power could extinguish. When the team launched toward the hub, human ships moved silently, using asteroids and debris as cover. Scouts monitored patrol patterns, sending real-time updates to the strike team. The humans approached the hub with precision, every step calculated to avoid detection. Elias led Mara and a small team toward the central array of the hub. Guards patrolled predictably, drones scanned in set patterns, and automated defenses waited for anomalies. But humans were unpredictable. They moved with intelligence, improvisation, and careful patience. Stay focused, Elias whispered. Every second counts. One mistake could alert them. But one clever move can change everything. The team split into groups, each assigned a critical task. Mara and Elias headed to the communication core, while other members planted EMP devices and distractions. Timing was critical. Each action had to coordinate with the others to maximize confusion and delay. Inside the hub, humans moved like shadows. Security doors were bypassed using improvised tools. Patrols were silently neutralized and automated systems were tricked into malfunctioning. Human ingenuity, born of necessity and survival, proved far more adaptable than the Zerath's rigid technology. At the core, Elias interfaced with the hub's systems. Using a combination of stolen codes and clever improvisation, he issued false orders across the network. Fleets paused unexpectedly, supply shipments rerouted, and patrols were misdirected. Confusion spread like wildfire through the Zerath command. Outside the hub, human teams executed simultaneous raids on key supply points. Prisoners were freed, patrols ambushed, and equipment disabled. The coordinated chaos forced the Zerath to respond, but every response was anticipated and exploited. Their arrogance and overconfidence had blinded them, and now humans used that blindness against them. The Zerath commander overseeing the hub grew frantic. "This cannot be," he barked. "Humans are extinct." Every report confirms it. Yet reports kept coming. Fleets halted unexpectedly, convoys delayed, communication disrupted, and prisoners freed. The Zerath realized too late that humans had never disappeared. They had adapted, survived, and were now reclaiming their place in the galaxy. Elias and Mara completed their mission, ensuring the hub remained disabled long enough to maximize impact. They retreated into the shadows, leaving behind only confusion, chaos, and a message to the galaxy. Humans were awake, and they were dangerous. Back at the hidden base, the humans celebrated quietly. Each member understood the significance of what had been accomplished. A major Zerath command hub had been infiltrated and disrupted. The aliens had declared victory over humanity, yet here they were, alive and undefeated. Elias addressed the gathered humans. They believed their victory was absolute, he said. They believed humanity was weak, fragile, and predictable. But we are none of those things. Humans are intelligent, adaptable, and resilient, and we never give up. This is the start of a new chapter for our species. Mara added, "We've shown the galaxy that humans cannot be crushed. Every person we save, every action we take, every victory we achieve builds hope, spreads courage, and strengthens our resolve. We are alive and we are fighting smart." The impact of their actions was immediate. Across the solar system, humans hiding in fear saw evidence of resistance and began to act. More settlements joined the movement. Supplies, intelligence, and reinforcements flowed into the network. Human presence expanded rapidly, connecting the scattered survivors into a cohesive force capable of challenging the Zerath Empire. The Zerath leadership convened in panic. Their fleets were delayed, supply lines faltered, and communication networks failed repeatedly. They had declared final victory, yet humans were everywhere, striking unpredictably, surviving impossible situations and forcing the Zerath to rethink their strategy. Elias studied reports from the front lines. "They are beginning to realize that humans are not weak," he said. "That intelligence, courage, and adaptability are more powerful than numbers alone. That is our advantage, and we must continue to exploit it." Mara stood beside him, her expression proud. "Every victory inspires others. Every act of courage reminds humans that they are not alone. That survival is not just about hiding. It is about acting smart, fighting intelligently, and refusing to surrender." As the sun rose over the hidden base, Elias looked up at the stars. The Zerath fleet patrolled the skies above, massive and imposing, yet uncertain. They had believed victory was complete. They had believed humanity was finished. But the truth was clear. Humans were awake, humans were organized, and humans were rising. "They think it's over," Elias whispered. "They think we are defeated. But we are only just beginning." In the days that followed, humans expanded their operations, coordinating strikes across multiple sectors. Supply lines were disrupted, bases infiltrated, and patrols misdirected. Every act of defiance reinforced the message that humans could not be crushed. Every victory inspired hope. Every action demonstrated intelligence and courage unmatched by the Zerath. Finally, the Zerath were forced to confront the truth. Their arrogance had led them to declare final victory, yet humans were not extinct. Humans were alive, active, and gaining strength with every passing day. Fleets hesitated, plans faltered, and confidence shattered. Elias stood before the assembled humans. "The galaxy has underestimated us," he said. "They have called our species weak, fragile, and finished. But we have proven them wrong. Humans survive. Humans adapt. Humans fight. And humans never surrender." Mara smiled. "They will remember this day. They will remember that even when they claimed final victory, humans were awake, moving, and determined. The galaxy will never forget what it means to face humanity." The hidden base erupted with quiet cheers and determined smiles. Every human present understood the significance. They had begun to reclaim their place in the galaxy. Humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and courage were unmatched, and their spirit could not be destroyed. Above the moon, Zerath ships patrolled, unaware that their empire was being challenged not through raw force, but through intelligence, courage, and the indomitable human spirit. For the first time, the Zerath realized that their so-called final victory had been nothing but an illusion. Elias and Mara watched the stars, knowing the future was uncertain, but confident in one truth. Humans were alive, humans were united, and humans were unstoppable when they refused to surrender. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of humanity from near extinction, guided not by numbers or weapons alone, but by ingenuity, strategy, and unbreakable spirit, and so, the story ended with the ultimate truth. The Zerath had claimed the final victory, but one human had opened his eyes, and in doing so, awakened the galaxy to the real power of humanity. The stars were quiet, but in the shadows humans moved. They survived. They adapted. They conquered challenges thought impossible, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.